Hello and welcome to an exciting new video from Explopedia. The United States was removed from the European Union's approved list of nations for admittance on August 30, just 2 months after it was reinstated following a 458-day ban on US-European travel. Many American visitors are left wondering how the judgment may affect their next travel plans. But don't worry, you've found the right video where we'll explain everything. So stick to the video till the end to know the complete details. And do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel for the more exciting content. Now let's begin. Are Americans banned from traveling to Europe now? Only 2 European nations have reinstated complete travel bans to the US, but most European nations welcome Americans, especially those who are vaccinated. Some nations have banned non-essential travel for unvaccinated Americans. A country-by-country guide to travel restrictions for Americans in Europe. With restrictions varying from country to country, we will now look at what's in store for American travelers in Europe. Austria. In order to travel from the US to Austria, passengers must provide a CDC-issued immunization certificate showing they got their second dose or recovered from COVID-19 within the last 180 days. Unvaccinated Americans can still enter Austria but must pre-register, show a negative COVID-19 test, and quarantine for 10 days. Belgium. Travel from the US to Belgium is authorized with a valid vaccination certificate. Non-vaccinated people cannot enter Belgium for non-essential travel. Bulgaria. No one from the US can enter without a legal exemption, regardless of immunization status. Bulgaria is one of the 2 countries we mentioned earlier. Croatia. American leisure travelers can enter Croatia if they present a COVID-19 immunization certificate and a negative COVID-19 PCR or antigen test within 72 hours of arrival in Croatia. Ages 12 and under are exempt. Cyprus. From the US to Cyprus, you need a negative COVID-19 PCR test within 72 hours of departure. They will also have to pay 15 to 19 euros for a PCR test upon arrival in Cyprus, with results accessible online in 3 hours. Children under 12 are excluded. Czech Republic. Travelers from the US must provide confirmation of immunization or recovery from COVID-19 within 180 days. Unvaccinated travelers must produce a negative COVID-19 PCR or antigen test within 72 hours of arrival in the Czech Republic. They must then quarantine until a negative result is obtained. Denmark. Vaccinated US travelers are still welcome to enter Denmark, but unvaccinated US tourists must quarantine after arrival and must provide a negative COVID-19 PCR test within 72 hours of boarding and then be tested again upon arrival. Those who have recovered must show a valid reason to enter. Estonia. Estonia is only welcoming vaccinated or unvaccinated Americans visiting for business, education, or family reasons. Finland. Finland has reopened its borders to COVID-19 vaccinated leisure tourists, including Americans who had their last dosage at least 14 days previous to arrival. Arriving US passengers must show their CDC-issued immunization certificate. Only necessary grounds enable unvaccinated US tourists into Finland. Minors under 18 can enter with vaccinated guardians. France. Unvaccinated Americans are no longer allowed to enter France unless they have a compelling cause, such as being an EU citizen or resident, working, or studying. Vaccinated US tourists can enter France with no additional restrictions other than a health declaration form. Germany. Unvaccinated Americans are no longer permitted to visit Germany for pleasure. Those arriving from countries not on the list must be vaccinated or have a compelling cause to visit. It must have been at least 14 days since the last vaccine dose was given, and passengers must have a physical copy of their immunization certificate to prove vaccination. Greece. Those who have been vaccinated against COVID-19 do not need to quarantine and do not need to submit a COVID-19 PCR test that is negative. Those who have not been vaccinated must produce a negative COVID-19 PCR test, performed no more than 72 hours before arrival in Greece, or a negative antigen test performed no more than 48 hours prior to arrival in Greece. Children under the age of 12 are not required to pay. Hungary. Travel restrictions in Hungary do not apply to people who have been vaccinated, recovered from COVID-19 within the last 6 months, or who have a negative molecular COVID test within 72 hours after travel. Iceland. Iceland welcomes immunized visitors as well as individuals who have recovered with COVID-19. They must still provide a COVID-19 PCR or antigen test result that is negative 72 hours prior to arrival. Those who have not been vaccinated may go to Iceland, but they must first have a COVID-19 test upon arrival, then be quarantined for 5 days before undergoing a second test following the 5-day quarantine. Ireland. Travelers traveling from the United States must provide confirmation of COVID-19 immunization to avoid having to undergo COVID-19 testing and quarantine. Those who don't have proof of immunization must show documents of a negative COVID-19 PCR test result obtained within 72 hours of arrival. After that, they'll have to quarantine and complete a second post-arrival test. Italy. Only individuals who have been vaccinated or recovered from COVID will be allowed in, and they must have a negative molecular or antigen COVID test result obtained within 72 hours of flight. The Netherlands. Travelers who have been vaccinated must submit a negative COVID-19 PCR or antigen test within 24 hours of their departure for the Netherlands. Children under the age of 12 are not required to do the test. Travelers who have not been vaccinated are presently barred from entering for non-essential or pleasure trips. Poland. Travelers entering Poland who are fully vaccinated, including those from the United States, are spared from the 10-day quarantine that is otherwise required. Portugal. To enter Portugal, visitors from the United States must produce a vaccination certificate or a negative PCR or antigen COVID test obtained within 72 hours of boarding their aircraft. Children under the age of 12 are not required to do the test. Romania. If confirmation of immunization or recovery from COVID-19 is shown, Americans can avoid the 14-day quarantine requirement. Children under the age of 3 are excluded. Children aged 3 to 16 must produce a negative COVID PCR test within 72 hours of travel. Spain. Unvaccinated Americans are no longer permitted to enter for pleasure trips. Travelers to Spain from the United States must additionally complete an online health control form and produce the QR code that results when they arrive. Sweden. Only Americans going to Sweden for an exempted purpose, such as residents or vital workers, will be permitted to enter. They must still present a negative COVID-19 test result upon arrival. At the border, leisure tourists will be turned away, irrespective of their vaccination status. Sweden is the only country apart from Bulgaria to put in place stringent restrictions on Americans. Switzerland. Travelers from the United States who are fully vaccinated do not need to be quarantined or provide confirmation of a negative COVID-19 test result. They only need to show documentation that they have been properly immunized. Unvaccinated passengers must provide a COVID-19 PCR test result obtained within 72 hours of travel or a COVID fast antigen test result obtained within 48 hours of flight. United Kingdom. Vaccinated Americans are exempt from quarantine in the United Kingdom. Fully vaccinated Americans entering the United Kingdom must provide a pre-departure negative COVID-19 test and will be subjected to a COVID-19 PCR test. Children under the age of 11 are excluded. Unvaccinated Americans must be quarantined for 10 days and perform 3 COVID tests upon arrival in the United Kingdom. That's all for today, folks. We hope you found the video informative and fun to watch. Also, tell us in the comments section your views about the European travel restrictions placed on Americans. And if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon next to it for regular updates. Goodbye!